Have you ever noticed how the happiest people over 80 seem to have discovered a secret the rest of us are still chasing? They move slower, worry less, and somehow radiate a peace that's almost magnetic. Here's what might surprise you. Their contentment doesn't come from doing more or staying busier. It comes from doing less in very specific ways. Today, we're going to explore 5 powerful habits where being what society calls lazy actually leads to longer, calmer, and more joyful lives after 80. This isn't about giving up or checking out. It's about understanding which battles are worth fighting and which weights are worth setting down. By the end of this video, you'll see that what looks like laziness might actually be the deepest form of wisdom. We live in a culture obsessed with productivity at every age. We're told to stay active, stay engaged, stay relevant. There's constant pressure to prove we're still contributing, still capable, still worth something. But what if true peace doesn't come from all that striving? What if happiness after 80 comes not from what you add to your life, but from what you finally allow yourself to release? The people who've walked this earth the longest often discover that lightness comes from letting go. Letting go of perfectionism, letting go of control, letting go of the exhausting need for everyone's approval. These small shifts in attitude can transform your mood, your health, your relationships, and your sense of purpose. Being lazy in the right ways isn't weakness, it's freedom. The first habit is being less obsessed with controlling everything. This might be the biggest source of unhappiness for older adults. We spend decades building routines, managing households, guiding children, and solving problems. Control becomes our default mode because it feels like safety. But here's the truth. Trying to control everything is emotionally exhausting and rarely works. Life has its own rhythm, and the more tightly we grip, the more frustrated we become when things don't go our way. The happiest seniors learn to stop trying to manage the uncontrollable. They stop micromanaging their adult children's choices. They stop obsessing over every doctor's recommendation or every change in their routine. They stop trying to bend the world to match their expectations. When you release that grip, something remarkable happens. Peace replaces pressure. Your blood pressure drops, your shoulders relax, and you rediscover the simple pleasure of watching life unfold rather than forcing it into place. Consider Frank, an 82-year-old retired teacher. For years after retirement, Frank maintained the same controlling habits he'd used in the classroom. He scheduled his wife's appointments, managed his children's finances without being asked, and insisted his grandchildren follow strict rules during visits. The stress of trying to orchestrate everyone's lives contributed to a mild heart attack. During his recovery, Frank's doctor told him bluntly that he needed to let go of things he couldn't control. At first, Frank resisted. Control was how he showed love and responsibility. But gradually, he began releasing his grip. He stopped offering unsolicited advice to his adult children. He let his wife manage her own schedule. He allowed visits with grandchildren to be messy and spontaneous. Within months, his blood pressure improved significantly, and more importantly, his relationships deepened. His family relaxed around him, and Frank discovered a lightness he hadn't felt in decades. Letting go of control doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you trust. Trust that your children can handle their own lives. Trust that things will work out even if they don't happen your way. Trust that the universe doesn't require your constant intervention to keep spinning. The longest-lived, happiest seniors understand this. They loosen their grip and find joy in simply being rather than constantly managing. This surrender is the greatest freedom. The second habit is being lazy about pleasing everyone. Many of us, especially women, spend entire lifetimes saying yes when we want to say no. We volunteer for committees, babysit when we're exhausted, attend events that drain us, and bend ourselves into shapes that please others while depleting ourselves. We do this because we've learned our value comes from being helpful, agreeable, and available. But after 80, the happiest people finally give themselves permission to stop. They learn that saying no isn't selfish, it's self-preserving. They recognize that their energy is precious and limited, and they choose to spend it on what genuinely brings them joy rather than what earns them approval. This doesn't mean they become cruel or indifferent. It means they finally understand that their worth doesn't depend on constant sacrifice. Ruth, an 84-year-old widow, exemplifies this transformation. After her husband died, Ruth threw herself into volunteering. She served on church committees, delivered meals to homebound neighbors, and babysat grandchildren several days a week. She said yes to every request because staying busy helped her avoid grief, and because she'd always measured her value by how much she did for others. But the constant activity left her exhausted and irritable. She had no time for the simple pleasures she once enjoyed, like reading or watching sunrises from her porch. One day, a friend gently asked Ruth why she never seemed happy despite all her good deeds. The question stopped Ruth cold. She realized she'd been running from herself, seeking validation through exhaustion. Slowly, Ruth began saying no. She reduced her volunteer commitments. She limited babysitting to once a week. She started protecting mornings for herself. The first few times she declined requests, she felt guilty. But gradually, something shifted. The guilt faded, and in its place came peace. Ruth began enjoying her mornings again, sipping coffee and watching light change across her garden. She had energy for genuine conversations rather than rushing through obligations. Her relationships improved because she was present rather than resentful. This habit shift isn't about becoming selfish. It's about recognizing that you've spent enough years earning approval. Your worth is inherent, not earned. The wisdom lies in shrinking your circle of concern, not out of indifference but to reclaim joy. When you stop trying to please everyone, you finally have energy to please yourself. And that's when gratitude for small moments returns. The third habit is being less driven to chase perfection. Perfectionism is a heavy burden at any age, but it becomes particularly cruel in later life when our bodies and minds naturally slow down. The happiest seniors embrace imperfection. They stop trying to maintain spotless homes, perfectly organized schedules, or flawless appearances. They accept that good enough is actually good enough, and that life is meant to be lived, not polished. Harold, an 81-year-old man, spent years maintaining his home to exacting standards. Every surface gleamed. Every item had its place. He felt pride in his perfectly manicured lawn and immaculate garage. But maintaining these standards consumed enormous energy. Harold was constantly cleaning, organizing, and correcting anything out of place. One day, his grandson visited and wanted to play board games. Harold kept stopping to wipe up crumbs and straighten game pieces. His grandson finally said, "Grandpa, I don't care about the mess. I just want to be with you." Those words cracked something open in Harold. He realized he'd been prioritizing perfection over presence, cleanliness over connection. Harold didn't abandon all standards, but he loosened them considerably. He let dishes sit in the sink overnight. He allowed his lawn to grow a bit wilder. He stopped refolding towels. His wife had already folded differently than he preferred. The shift freed enormous energy. Harold had more time to read, to talk with his wife, to actually play with his grandson rather than constantly cleaning up after him. He discovered that imperfection didn't diminish his life. It enriched it by creating space for what actually mattered. Perfection is like chasing wind. It's never-ending and ultimately unrewarding. Being lazy about perfection means accepting yourself and your life as enough. It means understanding that messy kitchens, mismatched socks, and imperfect bodies don't diminish your worth. The energy you've spent trying to be perfect is energy you could have spent laughing, loving, and simply being. After 80, the happiest people finally give themselves permission to be beautifully, contentedly imperfect. The fourth habit is being lazy about worrying what others think. This might be the most liberating shift of all. Many people spend entire lifetimes imprisoned by concern about others' opinions. They dress to please others, speak to avoid judgment, and shape their entire existence around an imagined audience that's constantly evaluating them. But here's a secret the happiest seniors discover. Most people are too busy worrying about their own lives to spend much time judging yours. And even if they do judge, their opinions don't define your worth. Edna, an 85-year-old woman, embodied this transformation. For decades, Edna carefully maintained a conventional appearance and demeanor. She wore neutral colors, spoke softly, and never drew attention to herself. She worried constantly about looking appropriate, acting her age, and maintaining respectability. But after her 83rd birthday, something shifted. Edna decided she was tired of being invisible and inoffensive. She started wearing bright, mismatched hats. She sang loudly in the grocery store when she heard songs she loved. She struck up conversations with strangers and told them exactly what she thought about politics, religion, and life. Did some people stare? Absolutely. Did some neighbors think she'd lost her mind? Probably. But Edna had never been happier. She felt free for the first time in her life. The energy she'd spent monitoring others' reactions became energy she could invest in joy. Her health improved because she wasn't constantly stressed about judgment. Her relationships deepened because she was finally authentic. And she inspired others, showing them that aging could be bold and unapologetic rather than quiet and diminishing. Caring less about others' opinions doesn't mean being rude or inconsiderate. It means measuring your worth by your own standards rather than by constantly shifting external approval. It means dressing for yourself, speaking your truth, and living according to your own values, even when they differ from others. The profound liberation that comes from this shift improves stress levels, increases self-esteem, and can even benefit physical health. When you stop performing for an imaginary audience, you can finally focus on what matters: kindness, peace, authenticity, and joy. The fifth habit is being lazy about rushing through life. We live in a world that glorifies speed and productivity. Even in retirement, many people fill their days with busyness, rushing from one activity to another as if stillness were dangerous. But the happiest seniors discover that slowing down isn't losing something. It's gaining everything. They learn to move at their own rhythm, to savor small moments, and to appreciate details they missed while rushing. John, an 83-year-old former businessman, spent his career moving fast. He prided himself on efficiency, on accomplishing more in less time. Even after retirement, John maintained a packed schedule of golf, clubs, and social events. He was always rushing to the next thing, rarely fully present for any of them. Then a fall forced John to slow down during recovery. At first, he was frustrated by his reduced pace. But gradually, he began noticing things he'd missed. The way morning light fell across his bedroom, the sound of birds outside his window, the taste of his coffee when he actually paid attention. John realized he'd been so busy moving through life that he'd forgotten to actually live it. After recovering, John intentionally maintained a slower pace. He stopped filling every hour with activities. He spent mornings sitting quietly, doing nothing but being present. He took walks without destination, noticing trees and sky. He had longer conversations with his wife, actually listening instead of mentally moving to the next task. This shift didn't make John's life smaller. It made it richer, deeper, and infinitely more satisfying. Slowing down means cherishing time rather than just managing it. It means understanding that life's true value isn't in how much you accomplish, but in how present you are for each moment. Happiness after 80 belongs to those who move gently through their days, valuing peace over pace and presence over performance. As we conclude, I want you to reconsider what lazy means. After 80, being lazy isn't about giving up. It's about choosing peace over pressure and presence over performance. Life becomes lighter when you stop gripping it so tightly, when you let go of control and accept that you can't manage everything, when you stop chasing impossible perfection and embrace your beautiful imperfections, when you care less about others' judgments and more about your own authenticity, when you release the exhausting need to please everyone, when you slow your pace and savor what you've been rushing past. Happiness after 80 is a choice to rest, to laugh, to forgive yourself for being human. It's understanding that you've spent enough years proving your worth. Now, you can simply be. Slowing down means finally catching up to what truly matters. Being lazy in these specific ways is actually profound wisdom. It's honoring yourself and the life you've lived. It's making your later years peaceful and beautiful rather than stressful and exhausting. If this message resonates with you, I encourage you to take action. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss future videos about living fully at every age. Give this video a thumbs up to help others discover these insights. Most importantly, share this with someone who needs permission to slow down, to let go, to finally be lazy in the right ways. Leave a comment sharing which of these 5 habits speaks to you most or describing your own journey toward letting go. Let's build a community that celebrates wisdom over hustle and peace over productivity. Remember, the best years of your life might be the ones where you finally stop trying so hard and start simply being. That's not laziness, that's enlightenment.